the Camino experience was particularly isolating in a strange way because it took up so many resources all at once. And then returning to, life involves checking back in with a world that's spent weeks in motion while you were away. And what I'm dancing around here is returning to, my own internet life. It looks crazy. This world.
You know why?
Because it is crazy.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. It's not like I wouldn't have known that 6 weeks ago. I knew that formally, but the degree to which the battles look insane and look almost tailor-made to make us ununderstandable to each other is shocking.
So I'm curious. I didn't have this experience. I'm less online to begin with, and I think there are a number of reasons that I did not have this experience that you're having here. But we both have had the experience in the past, when mostly before it was possible to be completely online back in the real world. Although I ran enough study abroad trips where we'd go deep into the Amazon where there's just nothing possible, that even just a week of no contact is a remarkable way to break some bad habits, and it can get in the way of good habits as well. But I'm curious. You said upon returning to at least some of the online life that you had before the Camino, the arguments appear to be particularly crazy, I think is what you said, although maybe I have that wrong. And I'm wondering if you can pinpoint that at all. Like, in what specifically are you seeing, or does the whole thing just look like chaos?
Well, one thing I'm seeing is that the focus on Israel is disruptive of the sort of fragile progress that we in the public had made on many fronts trying to make sense of the world. And it's not the first time I've seen this. October 7th did this.
You noted this explicitly at the time, that there were groups of people who would come together with understanding who are now being rifted.
The medical freedom movement.
Rifted.
Yes.
Yep.
They were experiencing unbridgeable gaps.
Right.
And it felt, after October 7th, like it was a direct hit on the medical freedom movement.
Yes.
Now, maybe I'm seeing things that don't deserve to be connected, but it felt like you had a powerful political force emerging that had endured, that had effectively been in a kind of war, and that had galvanized them into a community that had its own language and had its own assumptions, and that just shattered in an instant. And, presumably that was largely, maybe entirely incidental. But what I'm now seeing is that the way that all things Israel have taken over every conversation, it's like it is an unavoidable lens that obviously has nothing to do with most of the substance of life. And yet, because people have divided into teams on this topic, maybe understandably, but they've divided into teams on this topic, that those teams are causing every other discussion to fragment and disintegrate and descend into mutual suspicions of disloyalty. And it's not sustainable. I mean, the basic point is, this is something that I and we have said and others have pointed out. Once upon a time, there was Walter Cronkite. I don't know that what Walter Cronkite was saying was true. I don't know that it was more true on average than what the news says today. But the important thing about it was that it was shared. We did not have an infinite diversity of sources of low quality, which is sort of what we have now. We had a few sources of indeterminate quality, but the point is they created a shared narrative that allowed people to progress from that shared narrative and discuss the things that they didn't agree on.
And I mean, this is the argument in favor of institutions. This is the argument in favor of what is the New York Times called? The gray old lady?
Yeah.
That they need to be saved rather than burned to the ground and have new things built in their place. And I don't, I see credibility in both arguments, but usually you take the other position, right? That none of the existing institutions can be saved, but what they have done in the past is indeed provide us a shared narrative. On the other hand,
hold on.
Technologically, we may just simply be past an age in which synchronicity is possible.
I don't think we'll survive if we can't get to shared agreement about basics of reality. I do feel like our institutions are fatally compromised. That is not an argument against institutions. The institutions have to exist in order for us to function. We just, it's like, we have to get rid of the tumor is not an argument against the tissue that the tumor sprung out of.
Yeah.
We just have a totally malignant
or the
system.
concept of tissue, perhaps. Right.
So anyway, I think it is both true that accidental features of our internet life, the fact that you have corporations competing for your attention and keeping your attention is done through a limited number of hacks into your biology, and one of them is, keeping you agitated,
Yes,
angry, those sorts of things. So that could just be, that could be non-malicious, profit-seeking behavior doing this all on its own. I don't think it all is. I think there's a good bit of divide and conquer where, to the extent that we're at each other's throats, we're not noticing the dangers that we face together, and those two things mixed together have created what I think amounts to a, forgive me if I've said this before, but something like a hall of caves. It's Plato's cave mixed with a hall of mirrors. And the point is, each of us has our own cave wall on which we are watching the shadows. And we are sitting next to people who are watching shadows on their cave wall. And we can't, the normal thing to be able to assume, if you're a human being, is that if you are sitting next to somebody, that you and they are seeing a very similar picture.
Yeah.
And that is no longer a valid assumption. And because it's no longer a valid assumption, even the cave itself is kind of a chaos where you don't understand why that person believes what they believe because you literally didn't see what they saw.
Yeah.
And
yeah. It has always been true that we bring our own biases and, particular position in the world, both literal and metaphorical, to anything that we experience together, and we will have a different take. But the fact that we are literally fed different things that then become more and more tailored to where we indicate any interest at all means that our worlds are ever more different. And I think, one of the things that is maybe... to use the biblical reference, one of the horsemen of the apocalypse that is happening is sitting together in a room on two different devices where you're both taking in information. It's one thing if you are it's one thing if you're creating, there's a number of things that you could be doing on different devices that might be really no different from, he's doing the crossword puzzle and she's knitting, or, whatever might be a story from an era not that long ago, which doesn't seem toxic. And that's certainly a possibility with two people on two different devices. But if both people are scrolling through what seems to be what happened today, if that has replaced the shared screen with the news, which may or may not be lying to you, there is actually very little together in being together. You're not living a shared reality, even if you can reach across and touch the other person. If you're receiving information into your eyes and therefore your brain, they're wildly different from the person sitting next to you. In what way are they sitting next to you? The actual physical reality begins to be torn asunder as well.
Yeah, and ultimately manifests in a lack of capacity to understand each other, to collaborate, all of those things.
Yeah.
And I will say, just the final piece of this, from my perspective, is that my relationship, at least temporarily, with my phone, which is my primary device, is, it feels like a necessary evil. If I had a life that allowed me to walk away from it, I would be very tempted to. Now, I told a story a month or so ago about having checked in with two friends who did walk away from social media and finding them confused by the present, because frankly, I think the only prayer you have of figuring out what is going on is to try to cobble together that story from sources that beat the average in terms of their reliability. But the physical feeling, you check back in and you're looking at this device and you can see briefly the insanity of the back and forth. And the sense is that's toxic, right? It's like you put something in your mouth and it's super bitter. And it's like, well, I don't want any more of that.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, you're just damned if you do and damned if you don't. I don't feel that I have the luxury to walk away from it because, our professional life depends on knowing at least what other people think is going on. But it, I think we all know that there's something very bad for us coming through those devices, and we would be wise to figure out how to limit the toxicity. I don't feel that any of us have figured out a good solution to it.
All right.